This sitting is now resumed. Prior to the suspension, the House had resolved itself into Standing Finance Committee to continue debate on the Appropriation Bill and the estimates 2019. We thus return.
The Standing Finance Committee resumes with the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Oh, thank you very much. Ma'am, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West has this uncanny habit during these estimates of preempting my questions, but as I've done before, I will at least ask them, if only to get them into the record. And it's a 3-point, sorry? So, yeah, wise men think alike. They also say fools seldom differ. And they're energy related, ma'am. And one had to do with the business of natural gas and its provision to residents across Barbados. I've not had the benefit of natural gas supply services being inserted in St. Michael West for over 15 years. I do thank the corporation for doing so in the West Bay Road and Paris Gap area. 200-300 homes benefited significantly from that. But my question would be whether or not there's any plan to include, or is St. Michael West included in the present plans? I understand Christchurch West is not, but I wonder if St. Michael West is. I would want to go on to ask the two other related questions, despite the fact that the Honourable Member for Christchurch West jumped into the pool ahead of me. I'm sure you can understand and appreciate that analogy, ma'am. It has to do with the provision for an $11 million signature bonus relative to the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources. This may very well have to do with what we heard earlier with reference to offshore exploration. If so, I'd appreciate a response on that. And then the other thing has to do with the mobile refinery and a mobile refinery characterization study. If someone in the minister's team or himself could respond to that. So the mobile characterization study being provided for in these estimates, an $11 million signature bonus relative to the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources provided for as revenue. And of course, the local matter, whether or not included in the plan, is St. Michael West, the provision of natural gas services.
Thank you, Opposition Leader. The National Petroleum, as I said before, has a model where we put in gas where it's a viable project. And what normally happens, we get petitions from various areas, and once they are profitable and based on our model, we would put in the gas in that area. And as I previously said, we are currently being constrained by lack of finance. So I cannot specifically say right now if there would be gas in St. Michael West.
What I will say, Honourable Leader of Opposition, is that the NPC is looking at conducting a feasibility study, and we're going parish by parish to find out rather than waiting for the petitions, we're trying to find out the demand in particular areas, so we can be a little bit more proactive as opposed to reactive. So that feasibility study is likely to come starting within the next 2 months, and that'll be parish by parish. So the areas where we can and it makes sense to do so, we will look to be a bit more forward-thinking and proactive where that is concerned. Jamar. Go ahead. Just put your hand up. Just tapping my. Start to speak.
Honorable Chair, in respect of the question in relation to the signature bonus, my apologies, Chair. My name is Jehu Wiltshire, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy and Water Resources. In relation to the question pertaining to the signature bonus, as the Director of Natural Resources would have indicated earlier, 2 blocks were awarded to BHP Billiton in 2008 following that bid round. The licenses were signed on April 29, 2015, and the company submitted an EIA, which is currently being reviewed. As soon as that environmental impact assessment has been approved by the designated authority, which is the Ministry of the Environment, that would trigger the payment of that signature bonus. But I will let the Director of Natural Resources give some more details in relation to that particular matter, as well as the characterization study spoken of earlier. Chairman?
Good afternoon or good evening. I think the PS would have covered the matter of the signature bonus fairly comprehensively. As he said, once the EIA is approved, that triggers the payment of the signature bonus. And we are at an advanced stage of the negotiations with the company in relation to the EIA. We're currently about to have final consultations regarding the revised EIA. And once that is concluded, then that will trigger the payment of the signature bonus. With regards to the characterization study at the old mobile refinery, unfortunately, the last study that was done at the site was completed back in 1998 by a company called Golder. That company sought to assess the volume and nature and extent of contamination throughout the area, particularly within the site. Since then, unfortunately again, contamination has continued at the site due to aging tanks and a number of other concerns. As a result of that, we recognize that the contamination has more than likely increased since that time. So in order to have a good understanding of what it will take to comprehensively clean up the site to the required standards, we need to conduct a modern study, a more recent study, to assess the volume and extent of the contamination throughout the area beneath the site so that we can accurately cost it, identify what are the best measures to remediate the site to the required standards, whether we use a combination of bioremediation and conventional remediation methods, and what those methods would entail, what the aerial extent of the cleanup would be, how the timeline for that it would take to get it cleaned up to the required standards, because we have entered into agreements with previous owners of the site and I guess people who also have responsibility for the Needham's Point area to remediate the site to a particular standard. So that characterization study will seek to assess the current day volume of contamination, extent of contamination, and nature of the contamination, so that we have a good idea what the dollar figures are for remediating the site and going forward, and be able to design an appropriate plan to do so.
Madam Chair. To further elaborate on that point, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, we went on a site inspection, actually a couple site inspections of the site, and on the site now the contamination has not stopped. There are still massive tanks on the site which are still leaking into the ground. So there are areas where there's oil, fresh oil pooling, so daily the contamination is increasing. So the contemplated, there's legal action over the previous contract to clean up the site. And effectively, as I understand it, the contractor suggested a contract amount was not sufficient because of the volume of what had to be done. And if that was the case back then, it is even worse now. So we will not be in a position to be able to assess as a government whether we attempt to clean it up ourselves, whether we try to lease or sell the property to somebody else with them bearing the responsibility for cleaning it up, unless we have a full picture of the extent of the contamination. And it is bad. The contamination, as I understand it, runs underground and runs down to as far as the Radisson. right? So we do not know what we will get if somebody attempts to clean it up, and that lack of information is proving difficult in coming up to be able to come up with a plan as to how best to deal with that site. So the remediation study is necessary because we need a comprehensive current study to put us in a better position to inform our decision as to what best to do with that property.
Ma'am, thank you. I asked that question quite innocently. I did not expect this fairly dark picture to be painted. To what extent is there a threat to public safety? Is there a threat to potential investment? Can you say in the absence of up-to-date studies?
And my answer may have opened the door for your second question and taken us from the light into the dark. I know it normally goes the other way with your profession, from the dark into the light, but it is a dark question that needs some light being shed on it. And there's a reason for that. We are very concerned about that site. If you think about it, and there's no reason to fool the public of Barbados. The site was secured by a chain link fence and a precariously hanging gate. When we attempted to open the gate to go in the first, and the gate dropped off. The gate dropped off. And you have surface pools of oil. You have a tennis center next door where people keep hitting balls. We threw back over in excess of 100 balls, the ones that were not completely covered in oil. But all you need is for a child to decide to go over there, trying to find a ball and get sucked down into one of the areas with the oil. Or worse yet, somebody deciding this would make a nice home, somebody who has no other home, and go in and smoke something and discard a cigarette. It is, when we saw what we saw, we could not turn a blind eye to that anymore, could not leave it alone. That's why the study is being, because it has to be dealt with as a matter of urgency. It is a dangerous situation that obtains there, and although we inherited it, I mean, it's fallen back into our lap 10 years later, and a lot worse. We can't pass the buck on this one. This is something that we need to address, and need to address as quickly as possible. It is a dangerous site, and God smiles at us as Barbadians quite often, right? And we're playing the odds now, so we need to deal with it and clean it up.
I don't want to prolong the issue, but I'm not quite concerned. But I'm a little alarmed that it seemed to have taken an innocent question in this forum to raise that issue if there's that degree of concern. How aware are people who live in the immediate area? To what extent have they been advised of the danger? Businesses operating in the area, to what extent have they been informed? I mean, I'm really concerned, and I appreciate your honesty, but I am really concerned. I'm surprised that it has not been spoken to much more and much more loudly.
To address your point, what we can assure you is that we have established a management committee, a management team that deals with the day-to-day management of the site, looking at the health, safety, security, and environment conditions. Now, we conduct quarterly site visits to monitor the property, assess any areas of concern. For example, the area where the gate had an issue, the areas where there were breaches in the fences, issues with overgrown vegetation, issues with unfettered access to the site, and we've sought to address those immediately. So, in going forward, until we can have the legal issues sorted out, we've committed to conducting these quarterly visits, working with the relevant stakeholders. So we work with the Environmental Protection Department, Ministry of Transport and Works, Ministry of Health, the Fire Service, who all assist us in conducting site visits, assessing the HSSE conditions at the site with a view to correcting any issues of immediate concern until we can get the full remediation done. So we continue with those consultations. We've drafted a management plan for assessing those things and addressing those issues until the site is cleaned up, and we will continue to do so on an active basis.
And just to put the final full stop on that one, the reason nothing has been done to the site for a while. As I said, it's a subject of a court action, and there's an injunction prohibiting parties and the government from doing anything with the site pending the outcome of it. We have applied to have that injunction lifted. I believe the hearing was today, so I'm here. I don't know what the outcome of that was, but we expect, well, let me not say that. There's a hearing today seeking to have that injunction lifted so that we can take the steps that we need to take in order to have the matter addressed.
Honourable Member St. Michael East.
Madam Chair, I really don't want to be too strong in describing the behavior coming from Water Authority, because what easily comes to mind is genocide. The reality is that people must have water, and water is life. I've spent over 2 decades posing the same question from one government to the other. But my main concern is about the interests of the people of St. Michael's East, and I extend that interest to the people in the constituency in which the Honourable Speaker represents, but unfortunately he cannot speak for himself, so I would like to believe I'm speaking for Bellevue, parts of Station Hill, Licorice Village, Mile Hill, Bell Gully, that entire area. I have had so many excuses. I believe that I am at a point now where I need an answer that is unequivocal, with no kind of ambiguity whatsoever. The answer ought to be decisive. There must be a solution known to man that would allow people in those specific areas to be able to have access to water. What do you believe occur if human beings know that water is a necessity? Everybody must have it, but we have a department of government who seem to be indifferent in relation to providing water for these people, and every now and then, in order to cover up the irresponsibility of the department, they refer to the people in the most derogatory terms so that it would divert people's attention from the reality. How soon can I expect an answer to the people in those specific districts not having access to water and being able to enjoy all the modern facilities that most of us within earshot enjoy every day?
Honourable Member, your question is how soon can you have an answer? My response to that is you could have had an answer an hour ago. We would have answered that question before, but I will answer it again because it is important and it bears repeating. I was with you in late 2017 when we went into the Bell area and Licorice Village, and actually we were very surprised at the amount of people that remember me and recognize me. I don't think you realize that I went to school at St. Giles and grew up running about in that same area. So I am not as unfamiliar with the area as you might believe. But having said that, it is not that the Water Authority has been irresponsible in denying water supply to the people who don't have title to land in those areas. The fact is, it is against the law. So the Water Authority had no option with the law as it now stands to supply the water. But I have said in here, and I have given the undertaking, that we're working assiduously to correct that, because it has to be corrected by legislation. It has to be corrected by us in the cabinet and not by the Water Authority. I indicated that before we could attempt to correct that situation, there were other things, other I's that had to be dotted and T's that had to be crossed, and one of them was in relation to the water zoning, policy, which is going to come before the cabinet very, very shortly and before the parliament in quick time. So this matter is actually receiving the attention of the Barbados Water Authority and our ministry. And one of the other concerns was because those areas are in Zone 1, Zone 2, It is not simply a matter of connecting the water supply, it is what happens to the wastewater afterwards. But as you well know, we have made a commitment as part of our election campaign that we will sewer the bell and provide some sanitary solutions to the plight of the people in those areas. So it's not looking at anybody derogatively. I know this is near and dear to your heart, and I quite like you. So I would like to see you happy. So you have our undertaking that this matter is being addressed, and the government itself, before it was the government, made the commitment as part of its election promise to those people, the same people, that we will sort it out. So this is a solution that you can be a part of. So it is not going to be a case of 20 years down the line, you have to tell people the same thing and people wasting your time. The Water Authority can only act when we act, and we are pushing to put ourselves in a position to be able to provide water to those who are in need, and to be able to do so properly within the boundaries of the law as corrected. So it is a work in progress, but it is a work in quick progress, and I expect you're going to see relief to those people that you're referring to way sooner than later.
Minister, Minister, I know you can appreciate that I have had to enjoy, or rather endure, not enjoy, honestly not enjoy, but I've had to endure some answers that would normally massage the ego of an ordinary human being. But I would have to tell you that sometimes when I hear answers, I get the impression that I am not one. I strongly believe that this has led to persons attempting to get water by any means necessary, and you know that. These problems also, as a result of either avoiding, denying, indifference, whatever, the reality is that we have had challenges that led the residents there to face certain challenges that people at the hospital had to do surveys inside the community itself. Something, to some extent, where I cannot make mention of all the ills that follow as a consequence of not having water. But these people don't even know what it's like to flush a waterborne toilet unless they visit somebody else's home or visit a business outside. Never had a life, a culture that they've ever been able to enjoy these benefits. These people cannot have access to the opportunities available at a bank, to even go and borrow money to construct a wall, what we call a wall house on these lands. It is, I don't fully believe that officials fully grasp the challenges that people face in these conditions. And quite recently, you had to go there and remove special, I don't know what you call them, connections on the mains. And then the answer for that was attempting to, suggesting that it would prosecute individuals within the communities itself. If this soon means a year from now, people breathe and the heart beat every day, I would like to know that we can at least put standpipes at strategic I don't like to go back to those traditional approaches. We can put standpipes at strategic locations across the community to make life for people to water a lot more accessible than it is at present. So I'm being as human as I can be. In the interim period, Minister, I'd be happy if the Water Authority will move immediately with alacrity thanks to my vocabulary is strong, sure, with alacrity in order to see how we can at least bring some level of comfort to the people in my community and to the residents of Station Hill and Bayview as well, which is all outside of my constituency and is the constituency of the Speaker of this House.
Honourable Member, as the first transformative piece of legislation or amendment to legislation that I was attempted to bring as a minister, it was in relation to that. I am sure you can remember that particular cabinet sitting. I cannot speak about what happens in cabinet or go into details of it, but I am sure everybody in here remembers that particular sitting. It was pointed out quite rightly that before one thing could be done, there are certain things that had to be done before it. I have spoken to the Attorney General. We are satisfied, I am satisfied that we know what needs and what protections need to be put in place to allow the connection of water by the Barbados Water Authority to persons who do not hold title deeds, but that still has to be measured against the putting water into areas where it is in a restricted or prohibited area and we don't have the resources and the infrastructure in place to stop that from polluting the water table. The Prime Minister, our government has undertaken that we will provide a solution to those in the Zone 1 areas, and we are working assiduously to provide that solution. I sit 1 or 2 down from you in cabinet. I hear you all the time with it. I am prepared to work with you and see if we can come to some temporary solution that will provide some relief, but it has to be done bearing in mind the larger picture of the preservation of the quality of the groundwater, because we cannot facilitate one district and pollute the largest source of groundwater in Barbados, 1/3 of our supply. But I undertake that I will work with you to provide a solution, and the soaring of the bell has to happen. We are already committed to it. We are trying to source funds to do it, and as soon as we are in a position to, we will bring relief to the people in the affected areas, to the Bell and the Lake Ridge Village. It is one of the commitments of our ministry, and it is one of the projects on the table for the Barbados Water Authority, and it is one of the confirmed commitments and priorities for this government. You have no fear. You are in the same government. It will happen.
Okay, Minister, let me compromise on that aspect of it. Could you give me a word that in the interim and the management of the Water Authority and the Board of the Water Authority, could you give me a word that in the interim you would install at least 2 or 3 standpipes across the community to rescue the people?
Yeah.
Minister, I gave you my word that I will work with you over the next week to try to come to some solution that can work to provide relief without compromising the integrity of the groundwater supply. That's what I can do for you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the Minister, and certainly on behalf of the residents of Christchurch South, because they have asked me, through you, Madam Chair, to thank the Minister for ensuring that the effluent is removed from their community and that a measure of affluence can finally be returned. And they want to say, give the Minister an unequivocal thanks. I want to also say, because the Minister has moved with unreserved sinew to ensure that the wind, that the sea and the sun are natural resources, that those natural resources can form an alternative source of energy. And I'm saying to the Minister that I am happy that he's looking at those alternative sources to provide much needed energy as we try our best to become, by 2030, fossil fuel free and carbon neutral. I am saying to the Minister that I support him 100%. My question, though, is we have a situation at the light where we, as a central government, is paying the lighting power $78 million a year, using 150,000 barrels as a fossil fuel source to provide electrical energy in this country as a government. My question to him is, what are the measures? Because if we are thinking fossil fuel, carbon neutral, what are the measures being put in place to reduce, first of all, so that we can become more economically sustainable, and secondly, so that we can have our dream as becoming fossil-free and carbon neutral? Because on the current trajectory, certainly using 150,000 barrels a year, we will not achieve this goal. So what are the measures being put in place, and how can we incorporate our young people using their innovative spirit, their sense of creative imagination in this drive and in this renewable energy sector as it relates to employment opportunities, and they're providing a much needed source of disposable income that is certainly lacking in this country amongst our young people. So that's the questions I have for the Minister.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, as the Minister already indicated, government's electricity bill for 2019 is 78 million. Last year it was $67 million. The ministry recognizes that government is a significant user of electricity, and over the last 3-4 years, we have made a concerted effort to reduce government's electricity bill in terms of the installation of solar PV systems on the roof of a number of public buildings. Actually, we have placed solar photovoltaic systems on 60 public buildings. So we therefore have a capacity of close to 2 megawatts of solar PV systems on government buildings. Actually, the savings to date from the installation of those systems amounts to about $2.5 million. And indeed, it is our intention certainly within the next financial year to erect solar PV systems on several other government buildings, because we recognize that government has a vast real estate in terms of its roofs. And to the extent that we get the requisite financing, we certainly believe that we'll be able to reduce government's electricity bill through that means. Also, we have also made the effort to pick the low-hanging fruit of energy efficiency by installing a number of energy efficiency technologies in public buildings. We have installed in excess of 25,000 LED lights in public buildings through a donation from one of our external partners. We have also identified a number of other public buildings for energy efficiency technologies, because we recognize that significant savings can be had through the erection of energy efficiency technologies. But permit me, Madam Chair, to allow my project manager, Ms. Keisha Reed, who has been intimately involved in this effort.
Hello, good night, everyone. As PS said, my name is Keisha Reed. I'm the project manager in the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources. As the PS would have indicated, over the last 3 years, we would have embarked on a number of projects. Some of them in the initial stages would have been pilot projects, focusing on demonstrating the use of renewable energy. Now we're full ahead in doing implementation with respect to the larger government buildings. So we're focusing on buildings such as the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and a lot of the larger government complexes. By the end of this year, we would have installed approximately 3.3 megawatts of electricity under a program with the Inter-American Development Bank and the European Union. This is called the Public Sector Smart Energy Program. We're also about to start the procurement for the retrofit of energy efficiency technologies across 15 of government largest users. And we would have recently signed the contract with the Caribbean LED, a company who will be supplying an excess of 27,000 streetlights to retrofit streetlights across the Barbados landscape. We will be retrofitting both highway lights as well as major and minor roads. In totality, the public sector smart energy program will save approximately $7.7 million across all of the various interventions that we have. But it doesn't stop there. The ministry is always continuing with the assessment of the government buildings, because we have to assess them first, and we also do comprehensive energy audits. And we're also working with the IDB and the European Union, along with the Caribbean Development Bank again, with respect to the planning of a new investment program where we'll see in excess of 150 government buildings being retrofitted. Under this new program, we'll also be expanding as it relates to government's energy fleet from electric, with respect to electric mobility.
Madam Chair, to answer the second part of the question from the honourable member, what part do young people have to play in this? The Barbados National Oil Company Limited is rebranding itself. It is repositioning itself as the Barbados National Energy Company Limited, because the focus is not just on oil now, it's also on renewable projects and the development of the renewable energy landscape in Barbados. One of the intentions of the Barbados National Oil of the company is to source on a massive scale high quality, low cost solar PV panels. The company is not going to be intending to install the panels, it is trying to get high quality panels which they will be prepared to guarantee in at the cheapest cost using economies of scale, so that the local suppliers or installers of PV can buy directly from the company. And we're also looking at a project that is aimed at putting solar PV on about 300 houses of the most vulnerable in society per year. We effectively leasing their rooftop. We'll provide the panel, they get the benefit electricity, and we get the sales back into the grid. We're working on the project, but the intention is to train and facilitate the installation by young people. So I think Community College or Samuel Jackman Prescott is now dealing, or is about to deal with installation as one of their projects, as one of their courses. The ministry is pushing for that, but we also going to seek to train young people and young entrepreneurs so that when we roll out this project, we're not looking at giving all of that work to one or two big people. We are trying to facilitate as many people, young people as possible, to become entrepreneurs. And it's going to follow along the lines of the policy, the geographical policy that we are pushing. So if we're doing the project in Christchurch, then you can use young people from Christchurch. If we're doing the project in St. Lucie, St. Peter, St. John, St. Joseph, St. Andrew, we're going to use the people from that geographical location to do it. So one of the major planks on this push and project is the enfranchisement of young people and trying to help them develop their own business, because as we push into a 2030 vision for this, we're not looking to roll back. We are going to be rolling forward all the time. So by 2030, we are looking at no fossil fuel use in Barbados at all. So going forward, our electricity supply and all development will be informed by renewable energy, whether it be wind, whether it be wave energy, whether it be solar PV. So we need to train our people to take a part in that revolution. And the other thing, we're not looking just to do it in-house. If we become that first Caribbean nation to be 100% renewable energy, or derive 100% of its energy from renewable sources, then we can export that expertise and skills to the other Caribbean territories, because once people see where we're going, people are going to want to get on board. So the same young people can do the projects in Barbados and also get work in other Caribbean territories, pioneering that same technology that we're developing and pushing in Barbados. So I am very glad that the honourable member asked that question, because we are about to roll that one out, and a major influencer of that was the need to enfranchise young people.
Yeah. Follow-up question. So far I heard about the saving of approximately $15 million. But I want to know from the minister, of course, and his team, if there is any sensitization drives in the ministry that will allow persons to be cognizant of the need to preserve energy and conserve that energy, because oftentimes you go into ministries and see the air condition on all night, the lights on all night. There seems to be indifference as it relates to the conservation of energy in government buildings. And I want to know, because you're not only looking at treating at the secondary end, but at the primary end, what can we do to bring down this massive bill that we are faced with? And I want to know if anything is being done to sensitize those persons, especially in the public service, who are using this energy.
No, just speak.
Thank you, Minister, for your question. The Public Sector Smart Energy Program also includes a large-scale public education and awareness campaign. We're actually in the procurement stage to hire a PR firm to roll out this campaign for us. So we expect that by mid this year, we'll be able to start actually having a large-scale campaign to that effect. The campaign will focus with respect to the public sector in terms of getting the persons in the public sector to be a lot more aware as it relates to energy conservation and as well with respect to energy efficiency technologies. But the campaign will also have a public focus, and it will build on the work we would have done in the past in terms of using the traditional media as well as social media platforms to get the message out there.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
Good evening to all my colleagues and members, professional members of staff with the Minister for the department or that ministry. There are a few things that we want to raise, ma'am, and to really get some answers that will help to ease my heart. And as I speak this evening, I'm not only speaking for the people of St. Thomas, but I'm speaking for the people and giving a voice for poor people, the disabled, the elderly, those who are really disenfranchised when it comes to this whole water issue. I unfortunately would not have been in my seat when the minister explained, and I understand what he has said. And I really want to refer to the Millennium Goals, at Goal 7, that speaks to ensuring environmental sustainability at Target 10. To have, by that particular year, 2015, because I know there are other goals that have been extended, access for persons for drinking water. And I am disturbed, ma'am, that at this time in my old age, that we in St. Thomas suffer for water in a way that 2 weeks ago I bathed in a pet bottle. And I have a water tank. There are so many people who are suffering, and I know that the water mains in St. Thomas were changed between 2003, 4, and 5, but yet we have no water in a parish that is surrounded by other parishes where the rain falls at least every day. So I'm hearing about drought, about whether there's heavy rain falling, we are without water. Whatever is happening, St. Thomas gets a blow. My other colleagues in the other constituencies surrounding get serious problems that throw our lives in a tailspin. And I am hurt as an older woman when an administration for 10 years sought to build a fancy building for millions of dollars that the public of Barbados and the taxpayers cannot get to find out there on the Pine, much to the detriment of poor people who only wanted to keep a standpipe in some villages or to have water connected. And I think that we need to be a little more proactive with what we do and more transparent and accountable to the people of Barbados. So I am saddened. Yes, I agree and support the members of staff of the Water Authority getting a spanking building. But we should have been incorporated, because I've officially wrote asking for the sinking of a pumping station or a reservoir that will service some of the people in the north. And the scathing response I got almost threw me into a fit. However, ma'am, there are too many poor people awaiting water. My folk who are in the environmental protection zone where the Harrison's Cave is, they are property owners, but they cannot have water attachments. But they have pit toilets. So the pit toilet and whatever's in it will seep into the eighth wonder of the world. And I can write, I can call till I am stupid. Those people have no connections. About 12 households, they have to beg for a bucket of water. I want to know what plans there are for St. Thomas, particularly, and it's not only Allenview, it is Sturgis, it is Bloomsbury, it is the Vault Road, and so many other communities where people cannot build, but they have land. And I understood what the minister said. It is a legal thing, or it is illegal to make attachments if the people don't have what title deeds. How can people living in plantation tenantries where there have been no conveyances offered because no surveying has been done? For so many years, people are begging. How can they then have a land tax bill? How can they show their ownership beyond the little thing that they do used to pay their rent? And those are what has people those are the things that have people confused as to why they can't have. There are people in St. Michael, beyond the Bell and the other places, Carrington's Village and other areas. I see the letters that have no running water. They're defecating and urinating all alongside of a paling. I have the documents to show what can be done to ease their plight. I don't want the government to break any law. Wouldn't the Water Authority be breaking laws, ma'am? When they come to my village and a burst pipe belonging to the Water Authority is on my property, they open an 8-foot deep hole and don't come back for 3 months and 4 months. Isn't that not breaking the law? I have a problem with what is happening. I came down Shopville this morning. I had to skip, and the way I had to drive, holes that were opened up by the Water Authority that have not been properly concluded or infilled, or whatever term it is used. I have a difficulty with that. I would like to get some problems because I want to know what plans there are for the people in those villages. As Minister said just now, to get some sandpipes or to get some water connections, because for me, the water running will not be as bad as what is in the pit toilets, and some of them will be cleaning up, and the environmental department has to work with them. What can happen for them at this juncture? If there's no plan there, man, I'll go to the other question.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Unquestionably, the Barbados Water Authority unequivocally agrees with you when it comes to your first statement regarding the supply of water and the conditions that your constituents at least have been subjected to. There's no stepping away from that. Regrettably, in our explanation earlier, you did not hear of the plans, and I will seek to reiterate them, particularly as it relates to the St. Thomas parish as well. With regards to the Sustainable Development Goals, Barbados Water Authority is very much aligned to the Sustainable Development Goal number 6, in addition to number 7 and 8 as well. But I'll go on to speak specifically to your concern, which is how can the Barbados Water Authority address the concerns you've had that would definitely assist with the poor, the disabled, and the elderly. The St. Thomas region is fed primarily through a feed at the Shophill Reservoir. The Shophill Reservoir actually has 6 separate feeds that go into that particular reservoir. One of the feeds from Manu is non-functional because that is a well resource, a water resource that is currently not in use because it is too saline. But what we've explained earlier is that the Ionics desalination plant, the Spring Garden desalination plant, is expanding by 150%. This means that 15,000 gallons of water per day will be sent through 15,000 cubic meters of water will be additionally produced, and that will flow through the system in Lancaster, through Trent to Lancaster, and some of that will flow into Shophill. That additional production, we see 1 million gallons going through that particular system, which would feed 3 distinct areas.
Some will go to the north, some will go through Apes Hill into Casablanca, and the remainder will go into Shop Hill. The Barbados Water Authority has been extremely cognizant and extremely aware of the plight of those in St. Thomas. And in the interim, as a temporary measure, you would have, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we recently installed as many as 6 tanks in the immediate vicinity of Redmonds and Bagatelle, and we're looking to install a number of community tanks as well to aid or to assist the various communities, at least at an interim measure. But the plans afoot in terms of the expansion of the INX plant, the desalination plant, should see that water flowing into the St. Thomas region by the end of April or early May. And that is the primary fix for that particular situation that we have.
May I, please? Thank you very much for your response, sir.
Member?
Oh, beg your pardon, Minister.
Yes, I'd just like to answer. Sorry, do you want the other parts of your question answered?
I have so many other questions that I would rather get to the other one, because I've been hearing this for so long now that I am tired. And the distinguished members here do not know what we as politicians have to go through. When pipes are off, they call us, they come. We have a miserable life when we chose that life. But it is really, really, very heart-wrenching. And if mine goes off with a tank, then I know what happens to others. But if I could ask another question, sir, rather than the extension, because I could always call and get some information further to today. I wanted to find out, ma'am, let me say that I recognize that there is a dam that takes all the water of Mount Misery, Ericot, farmers, and those communities that Sir Charles has for his polo field. What plans does the Water Authority have for the water that pours through, despite whether rain falls or not in Pori Spring, and it goes down to the West Coast, and sometimes down there gets flooded as a result? What can be done to cap that water? Can it be dammed in Rock Hall? I don't have the skills or the knowledge. My role is a classroom teacher. So I'm not technical, but in my ignorance, I want to find out, because I believe that for so many centuries, water running through Pori Spring cannot be tapped so that we can be able to take access of it as a people. And I would like to know, can there be plans, Dr. Mons, please?
Member of Parliament, the problem with Pori Spring actually is because there's a Pori Spring Act which has somehow tied the hands of the Water Authority in terms of developing that water. But as I indicated previously, with collaboration with Carl Williams, at the junction where the gully from Pori Spring and Danscombe meet, which is just east of Highway 2A, a depression has been created where any of the water, both the runoff from the spring as well as surface runoff, ends up before it goes down to the sea. And what is happening is that it is recharging the groundwater and will contribute to any obstructions downstream, and we have Trent's pumping station downstream of that location.
Sorry.
Madam Chair, I think I actually need to answer one part, because in the first question, the honourable member had asked about 5 or 6 questions, and there's one I believe I actually have to answer. So with your leave. In respect of the persons living above Harrison's Cave, Harrison Cave is in a Zone 1 area, and that is the difficulty there. The Barbados Water Authority cannot make the connections because development is prohibited in Zone 1 areas. In our rezoning policy, we are looking at the areas that we can permit some development if the people put in the proper septic service to prevent the groundwater infiltration. That's the reality. For the people who are right above Harrison's Cave, as it stands now, the effluent leaks and seeps into the cave and actually stains the stalactites. So the persons who run and manage the cave have to manually brush off and clean the stalactites. So there is contamination from those houses in that area into the cave itself. If we add water on top of that, it'll be much worse. So I sympathize, and the Water Authority sympathizes entirely with people who don't have water. Right? Sorry, empathize, thank you. We empathize entirely with people who don't have water, but our hands are tied in respect of certain things. If you are smack dab in the middle of Zone 1, the Water Authority cannot connect you. That is the reality.
All right, my final question, please. What synergies, what connections are there with the Water Authority and the Ministry of Public Works and Maintenance when it comes to these monstrous holes? That I had a hole since October the 26th, and I begged MTW last week to close it for me, whether the Water Authority had, and it was in a corner from Sturgis going to Carrington's Village to Wexmore Hall. And there's so many others across the island. Is there a plan? Because I know in the previous administration of the Barbados Labour Party, there was an agreement with the utility companies that whenever there was excavation on roads, that the companies will come in immediately after, money will be transferred from one account to the next, whether it be light or water, whatever, and have those with. Barbadians are suffering, motorists and pedestrians, as a result of these massive holes where there's little or no marking at all. The can falls in. They're real serious problems, Mr. Minister. I would like to find out, and finally, to end up, why can't the water tanks have on a jingle? Don't blow up my house at 1 in the morning, because I don't know who it is. I don't know if it is a criminal, because for how things are now, you can't take chances. A little jingle on the truck, like the ice cream truck, can make a difference. I've written officially as well, asking for a cap to be put onto the nozzle, or whatever it is from the pipe, at the bottom of the truck. They drive on over the dead monkey, the crapo, the dog, whatever sewage is in the road, and then that pipe has to feed us in our households. And I've been writing and asking and calling, and everything seems to have gone in the past. With another administration into file 13. Well, all Barbadians are going to have to rely on those services, and we are asking the Water Authority, please, help us in rural Barbados, especially the north, to be able to live a little more comfortable life, and for those persons who are residents there, to get a chance to enjoy life to the fullest, and to have a shower, and for our businesses to continue to function, and for our schools to remain open when the pipes are off. We are feeling it, Minister. Distinguished gentlemen and ladies, we are feeling it. It is unbearable now. And I'm happy for this opportunity that I can get some answers, because I'm going to tie the Barbados Water Authority to them, and the calling program will be mine. Thank you. I know you can get some answers then.
Honourable Member, I'm surprised you actually waited this late in the day. I was expecting you a lot earlier, but I'm pleased to answer your questions. Fair enough. Madam Chair, with respect to the holes in the road, the Honourable Member has contacted me on a number of occasions in relation to holes. Quite forcefully, often. The program still is in place, but the reality, Madam Chair, is that we were suffering hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. The contractors stopped undertaking the work behind the Barbados Water Authority because we were unable to pay them. And that is the reality. We did not have the material, the money, nor the equipment to do it ourselves. We are trying to put aside funds to do a comprehensive backfill program, because there are a lot of areas that we would have fixed the water pipes and the water mains that still are left to be repaired. I believe, well, the board of the Water Authority had undertaken to do a public relations program asking people to identify any holes or areas left by the Water Authority that we can proceed to fix them as soon as we can. We're trying to get the resources in place to tackle that. So I would like the Honourable Member to know that we hear her, we have heard her, and we are taking, as soon as we have the money, it's a priority for us, because you've made it quite plain what will happen, what you would do if it happens, and it happens to you or your grandchild. So, and I bear that, your grandchildren, I bear that in mind. Madam Chair, with respect to water tankers with a jingle, it's interesting the Honourable Member has raised that, because we identified that as a possible solution as well. Other people have suggested it. The difficulty for us, Madam Chair, is that the water tankers do not belong to us. So we have water tankers which we have on lease from 2 different agencies. One is a lot more cooperative than the other one. I believe we'll be able to get jingles or some other notification alert put on some of the water tankers, and we will approach and ask both parties who are leasing to us. But this is something that we have on the cards to investigate, because the suggestion has been made more than once, and we're actively looking into that. With respect to the sanitization issue, the tankers generally do have taps, and we sanitize the tankers every morning and every afternoon. So before the tankers go out, they're sanitized. When they come back in, they're sanitized again. So we do as much as we can to alleviate that. So I would just like to express that so that the member can have some measure of comfort that we do our best to maintain the highest level of hygienic standards with respect to the water tankers.
Harrison's Cave is not a zone 1 here. It's a special area, not a zone 1. But let somebody else speak.
Honorable member for St. George South.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And indeed, I recognize that we're coming to the end of the debate, the presentation, sorry. But I want to start by making a statement with respect to what we will have seen over the years and the level of discomfort that I still have as it relates to the Ministry of Energy. And indeed, we spoke on water, and I can ask a million questions this afternoon, but I don't have the time. But we saw over the last 5 years a sector that was in inertia, a dying head, I call it. That is the Ministry of Energy. And indeed, I want to, at this stage, compliment the minister, because I think over the last few months, the minister has shown some will to get this sector going. And my point remains that the energy sector, I have not seen enough energy or strategies to tell me that we will reach the 2030 goal of 100% renewable. And I raise one point here out of the many that I have, but time will not allow me to. The Smart Energy Fund, and this question is targeted to the Permanent Secretary. I see the shuffling, but I would like the Permanent Secretary to answer, because he's the constant. With respect to the electric bus study, fund was given under the Smart Energy Fund back in 2013 to conduct a smart energy study in this country. And we are on the brink of ordering 2 electric buses, and to date, no study has been done. And let me bring the context to the lower chamber and the public, because this study will inform us several things. We know that renewable energy, PV, photovoltaic, solar, and indeed wind are intermittent. So when you do a study, an electric study, this will give us the information as to whether we can have storage, what size buses, what type of fares, even the economic analysis. And I would like to know why we have not done a study up to today, even though money was allocated. This is not for the minister, this is for the Permanent Secretary. Why we did not, or we have not done a study up to today to inform us, better inform us, as to how we can address the use of electric buses in this country. And it's not just a case of buying buses. There's a lot that go into preparing this country for the use of electric buses. So over to you, Minister, and I don't think I will get a chance to ask other questions based on time.
Thank you.
But I have a follow-up if I have time.
I want to give somebody else a chance.
Madam Chair, you saw people ask 3 questions in this little chamber this
Honourable
afternoon.
member, thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. I am pleased to respond to it. First of all, the honourable member has spoken to the reason why the renewable energy sector has not advanced within the last 3 years. First of all, let me say that, as I believe the honourable member is aware, that one has to create the requisite investment climate to progress the sector. And one important point in that regard is the fact that you need to send a clear and transparent signal to the investment community in terms of a permanent price for renewable energy. You had a situation where in 2016, temporary rates were established for renewable energy, and that would have prevented some entities out there who wanted to invest in the renewable energy sector to have a clear appreciation, a clear understanding of if they invest in renewable energy in terms of having that permanent rate. That matter is being addressed. But in relation to...
I particularly asked a question about a transport study.
I'm coming to that, sir.
And the permanent secretary is taking me all around the world about rates. He needs to answer the question with respect to why we have been in inertia for 5 years. Money was given by IDB to conduct a study, and up to today we have not done a study, but yet we're purchasing electric buses. That is my question to the permanent secretary.
Madam Chair, I just wish to point out that the PS has 5 minutes to answer the question, and he should be allowed the opportunity to construct his answer as he sees fit once he answers the question.
Agreed. Carry on, permanent secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, this year is the first time that we are providing funds in the estimates to facilitate that study. As part of the process in terms of ensuring that we have the requisite climate for electric mobility, the purchase of these 2 to 4 buses, we are going to be undertaking a pilot project with a view to ensuring that when we purchase additional buses, we would have an evidence-based climate in which to facilitate electric mobility in terms of public transport. In summary, I think that is how I would wish to answer that question, but it all is within the context of the available resources, and we have made provision for that in the next financial year with a view to undertaking that study.
Madam Chair, just to provide clarification, the minister spoke about an Energy Smart Fund. That's a separate program which would have established a fund in the Enterprise Growth Fund Limited, and that was specific to allowing the private sector to be able to do renewable energy efficiency projects. As it relates to electric vehicles pilot and study, that was included in this new program, the Public Sector Smart Energy Program, which, as the PS said, this is the first year we've included resources to do that study.
Thank you. Honourable member for St. Philip West.
Chair, let me just start my question by making a few statements. In 1986, I had the privilege of going to St. Croix. They're a water-scarce country, and they were using desalinated salt water, seawater. 2010, I went to Las Vegas, the middle of a desert, no water problem. 2018, I've been to Dubai, middle of a desert, no water problem. Barbados has rainfall. Barbados also is surrounded by water. Can someone please help me to understand what is the real problem facing Barbados with its capacity to deliver water? And two, is it possible to use seawater for desalination purposes to be potable and portable?
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I'll answer by firstly giving some context. Barbados is not just only a water-scarce country, but it's the 15th water-scarce country in the world. And once you understand that contextually, you will be able to understand what the challenges are. While we may be surrounded by water, and while desalination, reverse osmosis is always an option, it is the most expensive option in the production of water. The two current permanent desal plants that were committed to by the Cabinet in 2016 at a cost of $120 million would have actually added $15 million in expense to the Barbados Water Authority's bottom line. Simply unaffordable, simply unsustainable. $15 million per month. And it's for that reason that the Barbados Water Authority has had to back off of what we call the desalination option and to look at it in a modular way, or to look at other options as to how we can augment our water supply. So I do appreciate what you have brought to the table, and we have to juxtaposition that against what Barbadians see as, yet still see, as a high cost of supply. Most people believe that water is expensive, and water is actually quite now expensive to produce, particularly when you're at 98 abstraction of groundwater, and you have to look at other ways to augment that water supply. So the options have to be weighed very carefully against the availability of funding. If we were to pursue the option of desalination supply in the way that was conceived several years ago, we would not be able to afford it. Barbadians would not be able to afford it. As it is, we can produce water significantly under $1. Brackish water desalination costs about $1 to $1.15. Seawater desalination will cost in excess of $4. We sell water at the lowest tier at $2.48, and it moves to the next tier at $3.71, to the next tier at $4.66, and the highest tier at $7.78. And for the majority of residents, for the majority of citizens, paying much more than where they are now will pose a challenge.
Thank you very much. But let me ask you a second question. In today's world where we continue to use terms like circular economy, and I heard the minister speak about using wave energy, solar energy, and wind energy to fuel, to run factories, whatever else you seem to, is this possible for a desalination plant?
Thanks for that question again. Under the same public sector smart energy program, we do recognize that the ocean energy resource is something that we need to review and to ready Barbados as it relates to this technology. Most of the technologies some of them are in the early stages of development. We would have done an assessment in 2017 looking at the various types of technology and what's possible for Barbados. And currently we have a tender out where we'll be doing detailed assessments as it relates to the two top technologies that were identified, and that is OTEC, which is ocean thermal conversion, and wind, offshore wind. So we're doing those studies, and the ministry is working with the various partners as it relates to Light and Power and the Ministry of Blue Economy in this effort.
Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to deal quickly with the issue of natural gas and water, but I'll go to natural gas first. During my constituency visits before I got to this honorable place and thereafter, constituents would ask me the question, why is it that they can't get natural gas? For example, Clark's Gap, extinct villages, etc. Just some areas I'm highlighting in constituency. And they often ask me the question because they will see, for example, natural gas available on a main road. But
Remember, this question was asked and answered extensively earlier. Unless you have another spin on it.
I'm just going to the issue of the provision of natural gas, but if I'll take your ruling on it.
Go to the end. Let's hear what you have to say.
Right. So I want perhaps if the minister could explain why is it, or if is at all possible, that we can move to a pricing mechanism to enable residents within the constituency to benefit from the distribution of natural gas, especially when you have natural gas on the left and right of the road.
We're undertaking a feasibility study across the entirety of Barbados, parish by parish, to determine the demand for the natural gas and the options with respect to installing it to as many people as we can. The problem is, Honourable Member, that most people do not want to pay the installation costs of the natural gas. So the fact that the natural gas may be in the next road or on the next main road does not mean it has run to you. So it is not simply a matter of, hey, I want to connect natural gas, let me connect it. That involves cutting the road, laying pipe, reinstating the road. So it is not that simple. What tends to happen is you tend to push natural gas if a road is being dealt with or resurfaced at that point in time. We expand the reach of the natural gas. If there's a commercial entity that is making a demand for the natural gas further down the line, and we can tie people in under the cost of that commercial entity installing the natural gas to them. But having said that, we are undertaking a feasibility study because we have a lot of anecdotal evidence. You get MPs calling to ask, well, why we can't get natural gas here, right? Because one person may have asked them or two people may have asked them. So we don't want to do this ad hoc anymore. We want to have a full idea as to who wants natural gas in what areas. If you have sufficient people in an area that makes it economically feasible to connect 50, 60 people at a time, then we more look at those areas than if we are trying to send pipe to connect one person who wants it. But this has to be as a result of a study and evidence and empirical evidence, and we're looking to do that within the next 2 months. Sorry, start it within the next 2 months.
Yes, well, I was going to go, I don't want to pin you on the commercial side of it, but I really wanted to get, for example, what is the cost of installation per kilometer per road, or however, whatever measure you have? Because there are some, for example, areas where there are constituents who sign petitions. I have also had to submit petitions to the MPC, not during your time, but prior to your tenure. And there are residents who are prepared, the majority of the residents, in some instances even 95% of the residents on the street, who are prepared to pay. But if they know, for example, this is the cost per kilometer or per installation, I know you quoted earlier a connection fee of $11.50. I'm not sure if that's per household, or I'm not sure, because you just said connection fee of $11.50. But if you could, just to give us an idea, or maybe if you can't provide it now, going down the road, if that could be provided, because there are perhaps some residents who will be prepared to undertake, and if, for example, the MPC would be willing, and maybe to go on an installment plan payment basis, I know it will be cash flow, cash up front in some instances, relying on cash to follow through. But I think perhaps if we can look at a more commercial model that we can facilitate the distribution of natural gas to these communities, especially in St. Michael, because the residents acknowledge that perhaps this is the safest mode of distribution of natural gas, of gas.
Right. Honourable Member, that's the reason we're actually doing the study, right? We need to find out who wants, what they're prepared to pay for. Let me explain. The cost of connecting the natural gas is always at a negative. At the cost that we pay, or that natural gas is billed at, if you connect a domestic customer, it takes about 37 years to recover that. So the cost of connecting a domestic customer is often underwritten by the commercial entity that's at the end of that line, or that would have informed that pipeline in any event. The natural gas in Barbados, it is great to have, but the natural gas, what we charge for natural gas is not the commercial price for natural gas. The natural gas is exceedingly heavily subsidized. So this is why we want to do this. We need to do the study to find out where the greatest need is. If it is in a development or in an area and the people are saying to the NPC, well, we are willing to take on some of that burden that is less risk to you, then we will look at it. But we can only do that after a full study and getting all the information in. And that is why we are undertaking the study within the next couple of months.
Thank you. Honorable member, I'll give you 2 minutes to wrap up and ask that the heads stand part.
Madam Chair and honorable members, I thank you for the opportunity to come with my team and present and defend our head to this House, to this committee. As I started by saying, and I do firmly believe it, this is an exciting time for us, both in the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of Water Resources. You would have heard a lot more today from the Inquisition in relation to the Barbados Water Authority and the supply of water. I think pretty much anybody listening now has a full understanding of how we operate, the challenges we've had, and what our plans are. And it is exciting times here as well because we are trying to revolutionize a sector that has not operated efficiently, that has come in for lashes every which way you turn. We're trying to improve a delivery of service. I mean, things are led from the head. And we have a board that is committed. We have a chairman that is overcommitted. We have many plans, and we are determined, this of the Water Authority I'm talking about, we are determined to improve the delivery of the service of water to each and every Barbadian, to make it accessible, 100% accessible, reliable, and affordable. The other thing in the energy sector, even more exciting time, the 2030 vision is a massive undertaking. It requires the buy-in of not just the ministry and not just the government, but the people of Barbados. It is not just about putting RE, renewable energy, on houses or on buildings. It is about changing the way that we use electricity, the way we perceive it, the way we perceive transport. It is about equity. It is about supplying electricity cheaply or in a way that allows the most vulnerable to benefit at the lowest cost and sometimes get something back for it. So we're looking, there are so many projects that we're looking at that, Madam Chair, I'm sorry we did not get a full opportunity to properly ventilate the energy aspect of it, but the BNOC is looking to reinvent itself and plans are well underway. For that, we're looking at, we have improved on the licensing regime and the speed of processing licenses, applications for renewable energy licenses. You heard the NPC plans. Madam Chair, you know the issues with the South Coast, you know the achievements that we've made with that and our plans for revolutionizing the treatment of wastewater in Barbados. I am pleased, I am happy to be the minister of this particular ministry. I see largely in front of me, in a large way, what it is that we can achieve, and myself, my team, my chairman, and all the employees under the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources will bend our backs to do the work that needs to be done to make this ministry stand out and to deliver the quality service that the people of Barbados not just expect, but are relying on us to provide. So having said all of that, Madam Chair, I beg to move that Head 36 stand part.
Question is that Head 36 in the amount of $31,396,706 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Be accepted.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that you do now report progress to His Honor the Speaker and ask for leave to sit again.
Question is that I do now report to the Honorable Speaker That progress and ask for leave to sit again. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported progress and humbly requests leave to sit again. But before we do so, it's just a small observation, Mr. Minister. I was listening quite attentively to the debate that was unfolding. I was most attentive to the debate that was unfolding, and I noticed with interest your replies to the honourable member for St. Michael's East. When he had posed some specificity relative to certain areas in relation to Bellevue and Station Hill. Just thought I would mention that, not as an aside, and that the response that emanated from the honourable minister seemed to be skewed to Licorice Village and the Bell. And no mention at all was made in reference to the two other places to which the honourable member for St. Michael's East had spoken. So it probably was just an error on your part, or I don't believe that it was purposely, it was a purpose avoidance. But I just thought I would, just to bring it to the attention of the minister. I just thought I would do that before we break, you see?
I wish to assure you, Mr. Speaker, that the policies, goals, and aims and the plan of the Barbados Water Authority are not informed by constituency, but they're nationwide, and our commitment...
I didn't need a response. I didn't need a response. I just brought it to your attention. I didn't ask for a response.
Noted.
I didn't ask for a response.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the House be suspended for dinner until 8:30 p.m.
The question is that this honorable chair be suspended until 8:30 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This honorable chair be suspended until 8:30 p.m.